Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order this November 29th, 2023 meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. I'm going to ask our Executive Director if he will declare a quorum and make any other comments necessary for us to get the meeting underway.
Thank you, Chair Davey. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meetings law. The meeting room we're using at the Commission's offices here in Albany at 540 Broadway, as well as the conference room at the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan, are both open to the public during public session. Public session is also being live streamed, and the link can be found on our website at ethics.ny.gov. I find that a quorum of commissioners is present here at the Albany office pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive.
Excellent. Thank you. The first order of business is approval of the minutes of the executive session from the October 25th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Executive session?
I'm sorry, from the public session. Public session, October 25th, 2023. Motion to approve?
I have a question, but I'll make a
Sure. Commissioner Ayers, is there a second? Commissioner Groenwegen. All right, I have a few things, and then we'll go around the table and see what other people have. So let's see here. I made some notes if I can find them.
You want me to do mine while you're...
Sure. I got them. I'm ready. On page 10, Commissioner Carrillo is appointed Executive Director Berlin. Open government due by the end of the year. He stated the plan is to submit a letter to the Committee on Open Government. So I just, I'll say this to later, but it would be good if we get an update on where we are on that letter that we, second paragraph on page 10, the letter we sent to the Committee on Open Government. Would be interested at a later point in knowing where we are and whether or not we got a response. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph, last paragraph on that same page 10. Just a minor thing, but it looks like third sentence from the bottom. Chamber to commit on legislation that may have already passed both houses and either not yet delivered to the governor or delivered to the governor. I think that may be, should that be or signed by the governor? I'm just confused about that. Am I the only one confused about that?
I think it's correct.
Is it correct?
Because sometimes the legislature holds back on sending to the governor. And the governor, because the governor has a certain number of days, the governor asks for a limited number rolling in order to be able to stay on top of doing them and not having anything pass by failure to sign within the time period.
Okay. All right. Page 11, 1, 2, 3, third paragraph down. Chair Davey requested emails on those comments and other comments or bills be sent again. There were no other questions. So I guess highlight that for follow-up. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We'll send those on.
Okay, page 14, last paragraph. This was a funny one to me. Chair Davey wants to be clear to this commission and to the public that his intent is always to be, is is always going to be to call on everyone and himself, and suspects at some point he'll be hung on his own guitar.
Oh,
I would go
I
with
think
Should have
his
been
his
petard.
own guitar.
it's petard.
It's
His
petard.
petard.
His
His own
own petard.
petard, right.
The phrase is foisted.
Do you
Yeah,
play the
foisted
guitar?
on his own only guitar.
Just don't string us along. But
I corrected it. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
no, it's still so
It is,
funny.
you
That's
say,
all right.
okay, so we
All
know
right.
what it is.
It's petard.
Yeah, I know.
I thought you were
Oh,
saying
yeah.
spitard.
Let's note,
Petard.
the arrival of,
It's French.
I misspoke.
note the arrival of Commissioner
Good
James,
evening.
and Commissioner Whittingham. How are you both? Good morning.
It's petard, P-I-T-A-R-D.
AOG.
Yeah. And then finally, on page 19 for me, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph down, Commissioner Whittingham asked I think this just something needs to be done to that sentence to clean it up. I think it should, Commissioner Whittingham asked that.
What page?
The motion, page 10.
Take the 2 out.
Yeah, take the 2 and take the extra, the motion out. So Commissioner Whittingham asked that the motion be amended to make the effective, et cetera, et cetera. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Harris.
Thanks, and I apologize for not raising this by email in advance and taking up time with it, but on page 12, there's a paragraph that begins with Commissioner Ayers stated that the language is not concise and needs to be more specific, and as I said, that definitely sounds like the kind of thing that I might say, but in context, I'm not sure which provision it's referring to, and I think the minutes somewhat may be wrong in suggesting that that was about the introductory paragraph. I don't think I had any concerns about the introductory paragraph being concise and not specific. I apologize for not having the answer to this question, but I just think the context isn't clear. I guess if we want to approve the minutes and move on, could we do that conditionally on something just being added to make clear what?
Staff will go back and review the report.
Thank you, I'd be
again.
grateful for that, thank you.
Absolutely.
That was on page 12.
Anyone else? Yes. Commissioner Edwards.
With a reference to my comments first paragraph, I think I said something to the effect that no budget should go without the review of the commissioners.
Albany, can you speak up a little bit because we're having a hard time hearing you over here.
I'm recommending that, as a correction, on page 7, first paragraph, that in the context of this discussion, I made a point that no budget should go out without the review of the commissioners. And it's not stated in here.
So on page 7, Commissioner Edwards, just in case you didn't hear in New York, is saying that she made the statement that no budget should be advanced without the approval of the commission,
For review.
or review of the commission.
In some cases like this one, we couldn't approve because we weren't here.
Right.
It should be reviewed at least
Right. Okay,
by the chair.
yeah. Vice Chair Austin.
On page 3, the first full paragraph, the last sentence, it states that Executive Director Berland replied that a spreadsheet would be distributed following the meeting. That was a spreadsheet that would advise us as to what the savings would be if we allowed virtual committee meetings versus all needing to be present. I don't recall that being
I thought that was
circulated.
distributed, but if it hasn't been, I'll redistribute.
Please.
Thanks. All righty. Anything else on the minutes? Are we ready to approve them with Commissioner James?
Page 5, maybe you covered this a little before I came in, but I guess the last paragraph before staffing recruiting update, I think we were supposed to get some revised numbers.
Say that again.
We were
Commissioner
supposed to
James.
get some revised numbers. I don't recall receiving
Okay,
that.
so item for follow-up, revised numbers on staffing
This
and,
was investigation
Operation.
enforcement division numbers reflected on page 1 of the report.
It's in the current report.
Okay.
We corrected the prior
Also-
figures.
okay, thank you.
The corrected numbers were sent that Friday when along with other investigation-related materials.
Right.
I apologize, I missed that.
No worries. Other comments? All right, are we ready to approve the minutes as revised? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. All right, the next item on our agenda is the report from staff and the operations update.
Thank you.
Tab B.
Under tab B is the operations update. Note that as we've been doing since the beginning of 2023, in addition to comparisons to each category for the prior corresponding year, we also have the prior month's figures. We've now flipped the first two columns. So the first column is the most recent month. So in this instance, the October figures come first, and the comparator of September is in the second column. Substantively, I can say that activity has continued to increase overall this year. Notably, the number of complaints and referrals we've received and are processing this year now exceeds the number for the corresponding period in 2022. In other areas, the figures reflect both the normal cyclical patterns as well as new patterns. Again, in lobbying, we now have training for clients as well as lobbyists, and that has caused the number of inquiries lobbying group is receiving to remain at a relatively high number, but it's falling off now as a very high proportion of lobbyists and clients have completed their training. And as we get further into the biennial registration cycle, which began at the beginning of the year. We also have a new online ethics training program for lobbyists, to which the training for clients has been added. And again, the numbers of inquiries are starting to come down as more and more lobbyists and clients complete their training. In addition, we're completing our expanded staffing plan. We're very near completing that. I'll talk about that a little more in a couple of minutes, with new hires coming in, and that's having an impact on our ability to move matters through the system. In ethics training, we're continuing to show, this is on page 5 of the report, we're continuing to show trainings conducted not only by COLIC staff, but also the trainings that have been conducted by agency ethics officers and agency trainers in the more than 380 agencies that are in the executive branch. And as of November 15th for this year, very nearly 100,000 members of the state executive workforce have been trained, which means that since the inception of COLIC, we've now trained, or there have been trained, over 125,000 workers. It's a very substantial accomplishment. As I've said before, it's really a tribute both to our training group and the work they've been doing and the work of agency ethics officers and their training staff throughout the executive branch. We still have a lot of work to do. I'll talk about that more in a moment. Any questions?
Commissioner Cardoza and then Commissioner James.
On page 4, which seems to be the only one significant drop-off, the notice of delinquency of FDS filings is dramatically different than last year, and I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, it's a cyclical thing. Before the notices of delinquency are put out, and those become public, under the statute, there are informal attempts to have individuals either who haven't filed at all come into compliance and make their filings, or if there have been deficiencies noted in their filings, to have them come into compliance. As we complete the staffing plan, and another thing I'll talk about in a minute, we're in a much better position, and we will be having in the next month or so, the unit will be issuing the notices of delinquency. But we have to go through a process. And now that we're back up to full staff, you'll see that number catch up.
Thank you.
Commissioner James?
I had the same question, but then there's a couple of typos, I think, on page 6. is the first column. I assume that should be October.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Which page?
Page 6, first column, should be October.
And on page 7, the record request pending, looks like they should be reversed, because the first one says, refers to like September, and it's October, the second one is to October. on the second one.
Those are the October figures. We'll fix those.
Commissioner Edwards?
Could you explain numbers of matters pending on 2023 on page 1? The differential between 2023 year-to-date 2022. 151.
The 151 versus the 111?
Yeah.
It's the same phenomenon. We're catching up. And as the expanded staff, the completed staff, works their way through the inventory, primarily the inventory that was carried over, as well as simultaneously working on the new matters, the number of pendings is going to be dropping. So those are claims that have come in. And some of them will continue to move through the system, and others, as we will discuss in executive session. There'll be recommendations for various actions in those matters. And that's a bit, over time, we're not quite there yet. But as commissioners have seen in the past couple of meetings, investigative staff is making a huge amount of progress in working through the pending caseload.
Thank you for that answer. I was just wondering, I know earlier on, not this year, last year, we were talking about the long time frame, many incidents have been extended for several years. Is
Yeah,
that
can
the
you,
number?
just
Is
a
that
little higher?
is that included in this number?
Those are included in the number. We'll go into more detail in executive session, because we can't go into specifics, we're not permitted to, in public session about specific matters. But in general, the answer is yes. So but it represents both. It represents the matters carried over from the prior commission, as well as new matters that have come in.
Commissioner Groenewegen?
I just had a question about the reduced number of FDS filers. Is that a function of a smaller state workforce? You know, you read about the challenges the state's having in recruiting workers to replace those that have been lost to retirement. And I was just wondering if that 1,000 fewer filers is related to a smaller workforce, or did fewer people file?
We don't have an analysis at that level. We're starting to look at it.
Oh, okay.
We know one impact, and one of the matters, legislative matters, we commented on, and again, I'll share, if we haven't previously, I'll share the communications that we made. One of the changes in threshold filing rules, if you will, is going to have an impact on that number.
And my second question related to training and something else I read about the workforce. Recently, I think the local paper had a number of the percentage of workers working either hybrid or from home, and it varied greatly by agency. And I was wondering if the fact that people are in the office less than they used to be, is that having an effect on the ability to train, either positive or negative? I'm just curious if the change in the structure of how people are doing their work is affecting the ability to train them. Is that something you've looked at?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. There's a lot of learning out there in general on the effectiveness of remote work and remote training in general. And we've been looking at some of the literature in terms of the specific efficacy. I think it's an open question. Again, there's a lot of literature out there. Most of the trainings that our agency conducts, are done remotely. And over time, particularly the refresher training under the statute, is required to be remote. So it ought to be the same whether you're doing it from home or from your desktop computer. Ought to be. I mean, there may be environmental factors. There's a lot that's being studied. I think it's going to take a while before the experts in those fields reach conclusions, assuming there's ever agreement on it.
Comments, questions? Just one more on page 2. And, talked a little bit about this yesterday, but under miscellaneous, it's a pretty high number. Can you just sort of give us a reminder of what goes into that?
An awful lot goes into it. Both Keith and our general counsel and Michael Sand, our director of ethics, can speak to that in great detail. Michael? Do we have Michael? Did we lose New York?
Yes,
No,
I'm
he's
here.
there.
Okay.
I don't know that he
Do we
can
have
hear
Michael?
us.
Otherwise, I'll
He's
take a shot.
there. I'm looking at
Yeah, I'm
him.
here. I just
I
missed,
think he's not hearing us.
I just missed what point we're discussing.
This is the miscellaneous category.
On page
Oh.
2.
Yes, the miscellaneous category captures requests involving financial disclosure and lobbying, but it also includes many other types of inquiries, such as, say, someone might contact us and say, what do I do if I want a second job? Someone might say, what do I do if I have a complaint? Or people may ask questions about things that are beyond our jurisdiction, and we always try to help people with those types of inquiries to the extent that we can. So the middle miscellaneous category captures this spectrum of inquiries.
Right. Thank you. Keith?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, again, sort of generally speaking, miscellaneous captures everything that doesn't otherwise fit neatly into some of the other prescribed categories. But questions concerning nepotism, honoraria offered by municipalities, political activity, we don't already have categories for those types of questions, so they would fall into the miscellaneous
Correct.
category.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Shall we move on and go to the budget update under attachment C?
The budget update, consistently with what we've been reporting, it shows that we will have an excess at the end of the fiscal year, projected excess, in our personal services side of the budget, and a deficit on the non-personal services side, things like rent, equipment, contractual obligations, those kinds of things. As we did last year, we'll work with DOB, Division of Budget, to transfer money over at the appropriate time, so that our non-personal services expenses are covered. And again, the excess on the personal services side is the result of time it's taken to fill out the staffing plan. Going into next year, as we've discussed, not to get ahead of our agenda, that's one of the reasons we're asking for more money on both sides, but particularly on the non-personal services side.
Commissioner Cardozo.
On that overall point, though, what are we doing with respect to lobbying for next year's budget? I understand the explanation for this year, but it seems to me, particularly given the state's financial situation, that it's vital that we pass our budget, which people will misunderstand, because of this year's budget we're going to be fine on, and we're going to be asking for a significant increase for next year. And is there anything more we plan to do with respect to lobbying to be sure that the legislature understands this as it considers the budget?
Yeah, at the moment, we're waiting to have a response to the submission we made. We provided the justification in our submission for the additional amount we're seeking, $142,000 approximately. The only feedback we've gotten so far was to ask us to round up our numbers. And that's the extent of it. So our request, as a consequence of that, has gone up just a little bit.
But do we need to have
take into account the
sorry,
lending.
but do we need to have a further plan of how to lobby this? other than dealing with the budget office.
Yeah, our general plan, as in the past, is to deal with DLB, if necessary, deal with the executive chamber, deal with the budgetary process when the budget is introduced to the legislature by the governor. That's not going to happen for a while. So far, although the request that came in, the call that came in, had been for a flat budget, we've asked for more. We haven't received any rejection of that. But the plan would be, if we receive a different response, to press ahead.
So in that regard, do we have to be concerned about any surprises in the budget process? I mean, could a budget be passed in the middle of the night whenever with a
There will be.
proposed reduction, right, to our budget that we have no opportunity to weigh in on?
We will be, and we have been reaching out to DLB to make sure that we're not surprised by some action. At this point, the overall projected state deficit is, I don't think it's completely certain. There's talk about, what, a $5 billion shortfall in revenue, something like that. But I think it's too early in the process to know. But our plan is to stay on top of the process, and with the expectation that the chamber, when the governor proposes her budget, will include the full amount we've asked for.
Okay.
But do we deal with the legislature at all at this stage, as distinct from the executive chamber, to be, in effect, starting to lobby for our budget? Do we need to find out who understands what we're trying to do?
Last year, we submitted testimony in support of our request. And ultimately, we were successful at both levels. So the proposed budget met our needs for the current fiscal year.
Frankly, I would caution us from getting too far ahead of ourselves. First, we need to wait for the presentation of the executive budget by the governor in late January. And then following that, depending upon what the governor proposes that we receive, that may sort of militate going to the legislature and providing them with more information to better appreciate our needs.
Thank you.
Comments, questions? All right, looks like we've done both the update and the 2024-25 submission. Do you have anything you want more to say on that?
Not at this point. Other than to say we will be monitoring the situation. We are reaching out to the Division of Budget to make sure that we're kept in the loop.
Great.
As that advances.
All right, per diems?
The per diem.
Sorry?
Did you go so deep?
We're on Commissioner per diems right now.
Still in C?
We're,
Just one line
yeah,
above
so
D.
if you look under C, we did the budget update, we did the budget submission, and now just a word about per diems.
At last month's meeting, I read into the record the figures that had been submitted for payment to per diems for each commissioner. Those amounts have now, in fact, been paid, and so we'll be posting those amounts publicly on the website as called for by the Commission's resolution. I could read them again if anyone would like me to do that, but the figures are exactly the same as the proposed figures.
And they're in the minutes from the last meeting.
And they're in the minutes.
Okay, all right. Okay,
You skipped the recruiting update. I sort of alluded to it
sorry.
a little bit. Training unit, as we've discussed several times, we still have at least one training assistant position to be filled. And a determination to be made on the recommendation of that group as to whether or not to recruit another trainer. In the Ethics Division, we have a new deputy director to fill the position that's been vacant for quite some time. New deputy director will be starting next week, and a new associate attorney starting in New York the following week. So that group will be almost at full force. And then a determination will be made as to further recruiting. In investigations and enforcement, group is in the process of recruiting to fill a remaining investigative counsel position. So that's in process. And in the administration division, the group will be recruiting for another position shortly. Posting should be going on. So we're very nearly at the completion of the staffing plan. And when these remaining recruiting efforts are completed, we'll take a look at where we stand, both from a budgetary perspective and in terms of workflow. Any questions?
Sandy?
Yeah.
Has the second floor indicated any difficulty or problem with finally filling up our seats that are available in terms of the budget? I could probably have asked that question a lot better. So let me try it again. Has the second floor expressed any concern that we're still hiring and therefore our budget is increasing?
The hiring that we're doing, the staffing plan that we're filling out and the commission approved was the same staffing plan that was incorporated into the current budget. So the head count that we submitted last year, 68, is the head count that was approved. We're not quite at 68. We're approaching that figure. We're going to have to make some determinations.
Okay.
About where we go and whether other groups perhaps need positions that are not being filled elsewhere in the organization. Maybe move things around a little bit.
Say how many of those positions of the 68, how many open or how many?
When we finish this recruiting effort, we'll be at 65 of the 68. And then we're going to take a look both at the budgetary implications going forward and at staffing needs across the organization. And that's really, but particularly in lobbying and investigations and enforcement. We're going to take a look at where we stand as we move forward. Carol Quinn, our Director of Lobbying, has moved things around administratively within her group to some extent, and she needs to see whether now she wants to go to a higher number or back to the originally projected head count in the budget. So that's part of that three individual head count of 3 employees, the delta between the 65 and the 68. Same thing in investigations and enforcement. We had another position outlined. We're waiting to see whether we need to fill that or not.
Thank you.
Anything else here on the staffing and recruiting update? You have more on that?
That's all I have. Keep everyone posted. And we'll announce the new hires when they come in, when they're on staff, at the next commission meeting. If there are no questions, we did submit the annual ethics training report and the reports for the second and third calendar quarters of 2023 to the governor and to the legislative leadership. Commissioners saw that before it went in. It is attached to the agenda book as attachment D, tab D. If there are any questions.
I'd just like to point something out that I think is significant here that I tend to gloss over. After your letter, Sandy, in the opening paragraph of the actual report, the last sentence that this commission on ethics and lobbying in government is the first state ethics commission in the nation that is required to implement and oversee a program of mandated live ethics training for its entire state workforce. I don't think we should underestimate how significant that is, not only for this commission, in the state of New York, but for the country, that New York's the pace setter here. Whether it was inadvertent or intentional, here we are.
I would agree it was significant, but I think it was significant enough to be sourced. I mean, I'm interested to know where did that citation come from? I mean, who said that?
It's in the commission's staff's
We have
report.
surveyed all the states I mean, we're looking at models, you know, as part of our process of putting our program together.
So I'm just
We've
saying.
looked at everywhere.
Okay, I just think
Every
that
other
we should
jurisdiction.
validate it. It's so important and significant. It should be sourced somehow. So where did you get that information?
After a review of state ethics programs around the nation.
I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems, it's significant, and I think that's a good thing. But it raises, I think that you're gonna get a question, so who said? Where did that come
How do
from?
you know?
Sandy, I could speak to that if you'd like me
Yes.
to.
Sure,
Hi,
please.
hi, everybody. This is Megan Hennigan. I'm Deputy Director of Education. I'm sorry I don't have a video. I'm home getting over a cold, which I'm sure you're happy I didn't come into the office. I spent a lot of time researching. While there are programs across the U.S. from different state ethics commissions where they require training for their entire state workforce, as far as I could find, we're the only commission that has to do that live training. So while other ethics commissions will have a hybrid of both live and online, as far as I can tell, we're the only one that requires live for everybody.
How many
Thank-
agencies did you examine?
I couldn't
All
hear,
50 states.
Commissioner.
How many agencies did you examine?
State.
I mean, I looked over every state's website and looked at all their training programs.
So all 50 states is the answer.
Also, and there was a survey put out by the Albany Government Center, surveying all state ethics laws. And although it wasn't specific to training, it was generally as to their requirements. It provided a guide and an insight.
But that would suffice for me. You know, a survey of 50 states
Right,
suggests that we were the only ones who did X.
understood. Noted, and we should note that in the minutes. Commissioner Whittingham and then Commissioner Cardozo.
Thank you. Just a comment and a correction. I think it's great, the number of training we've had, but as you look at it, there's some that has 0. And then others where you may have 30,000, 3,000, and it's 40. Are we doing anything in particular to aid, or do we know what the source of the problem is for some of those with such large numbers and 0, or such large numbers and 40? For example, you know, is it that, do they have an ethics person there? What exactly is happening? So those numbers, it's great. The overall number is great, but when you look, you've broken it down into different agencies, and when you take a look at that, I am wondering, what are we doing to help those agencies that the numbers are really not good? And then on page 16, I think you've got a typo. You have 100% for the commission on judicial conduct, and it's 0. You either have, something is wrong. You have 46, and the number trained 0, and then you have a total of 100. So one place or the other, there's a wrong number.
Understood.
We'll check that out. It may be a typo, or it may be, I should point out, just so the figures are there, what the figures show overall, since its inception, 38% of the workforce has now received some training. That's the workforce and ethics training. Ethics training for lobbyists and clients, I think we're at just about 83% as of last month, which is also a huge accomplishment. That's all online. With respect to what we're doing about agencies that have zeros or low numbers, in many instances, it's a reporting issue that they're having. They're not able to get the numbers into us. And one thing the group has been doing is working with ITS. We have multiple initiatives with ITS on this. Is creating a vehicle to make it easier in terms of the challenges that agencies are having for them to report their statistics to us. We're asking them to report monthly. And for whatever reasons, whether it's staffing issues or other obligations or just ignoring things, not every agency is timely reporting in their data. So that's a problem. And the group is constantly following up with them. We have to get more on top of it, no question about it, and getting that done. We're also trying to provide more vehicles. The comprehensive online course is now available to agencies, both on SLMS and through other vehicles. They can put the module on their own systems. That doesn't cure the entire problem. That's not live training. That's online training, but that's part of meeting our goal, which is to have everyone in the workforce have at least one training by the end of 2024, and to have both a live and an online course by the end of 2025. That's in the plan that the Commission has approved. And we feel we're moving toward that, but obviously we have to do a lot of work to get there.
Commissioner Cardozo?
I'll say one more thing to Commissioner Whittingham's question about how we're helping agencies. Actually, Marlena Diaz and I next week are holding an ethics forum for ethics officers. And as of now, I think we have at least 150 ethics officers signed up. We're going to go through all of the updates of things that our unit is doing, all of our updates, and also one of the things that we plan on announcing, and maybe they'll hear this today, but we plan on holding agency-specific training. So we're going to say to those folks, hey, if you have high numbers, we're going to have an open calendar and first come, first serve. Make sure you get a couple hundred of your people into one of our trainings. So that will be just another way that we're helping them get their numbers up.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Cardozo, yes. And then Commissioner James and Commissioner Gronway.
I just want to refer back. These overall statistics is very impressive. Is a factor if we ever have to lobby the legislature on our budget to really be emphasizing this kind of issue, that the progress and how outstanding it is. I think we should keep those issues in mind as late January, early February, we really are lobbying for our government, but our budget, and this could be example A.
I agree, and I would, if I could just add a little to that, I would say, and also make sure we emphasize what additional we need in order to get to that 2025 goal of having everybody do at least live or online training by the end of 2024, which is a pretty huge accomplishment.
And I should point out, it's not just our budget. Our budget does reflect, at least staffing perspective, what we believe we need to do our part in administrating the system. There's also an obligation on the part of every agency to make sure they have the resources, and that they're asking for the budgetary increments that they need in order to meet their obligations.
Correct. And I go to Commissioner James.
Yeah, on page 15, I think there's an error. It looks like the Inspector General's office had more people trained than they have employed. At the bottom.
Yeah.
But I would like to comment on that. I think it's great that we have 73% of our staff trained, but I think as the agency responsible for developing and implementing training, we should set an example, and we really should be striving to get to 100% as soon as possible.
Right. You want to comment on that?
I'm sorry,
on us. Our own commission has a 72% training rate.
We have the goal of completing our trainings by the end of the year, and we will see that that's completed. But we still have another group training scheduled for those who aren't able to participate, and everybody in our agency will be trained by the end of the year.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gronway.
One question I'm curious about is, Well, we know the numbers by agency. Do we know the numbers by those in the workforce who are policymakers, where I would submit the potential for an ethics violation is greatest? Or do we ever do anything looking at those trained by jurisdictional class, meaning the exempt class employees who are all at will, to know, again, those two tend to be correlated somewhat, but it seems to me if we've got to target our resources, or we want to analyze the efficacy of the training, it seems to make sense to be looking at that segment of the workforce that I would, I could be wrong, is in the kind of positions where there can be the potential for, a greater potential for an abuse.
Yeah, and the prior law, and the prior commission had that. That was the requirement under prior law. The comprehensive ethics training was the executive workforce, was for the FDS filers.
Right, I understand that. I'm just curious, do we still have that kind of breakdown of now that we've got the entire workforce, many of whom I would submit are in positions where the potential for an ethics violation is greatly reduced. They're not in the position to influence hiring or awarding of contracts and the like. It seems to me we should still be looking at that segment of the workforce where the potential or the risk is the highest.
We don't currently have, well, we know who the FDS filers are, for sure. We don't have all of the data currently for the entire workforce in a consolidated database. That's one of the things we're working with the ITS group to develop. And whether that's going to be a unitary system or a system with multiple components is something we're still going back and forth with ITS on. Eventually, we will have every member of the workforce in our database. We can look to having the capability to tease out those who are policymakers. You know, we do have the information of FDS filers on the other side. Internally, we don't have that kind of IT capability generally.
I would think it exists someplace. Budget, controller's office, they already have a lot of
Well, policymakers and threshold filers have to be reported to us by agencies annually because of the financial disclosure statement requirement. But when we went to the new system, our old system, which combined FDS filers with the training requirement, was deemed by ITS to be incapable of being expanded, scaled up to manage the entire workforce. So we don't currently have the two married together. Can that be done? I'm sure it can be done.
Yeah, no, it would be interesting, and maybe this is partially your point, to do that overlay of training to FDS filers even, and see how far along we are. Anything else here? Well, thank you, and thanks to everyone on the training side, education side, for all their hard work here. We still have a lot to do, but we've made considerable progress.
Yes, I just had a couple of announcements.
Sure.
One Megan has taken care of, that the training group will be having their ethics for agency ethics officers and agency contacts. I don't know, did you say it's on December 4th, Megan, from 1 to 2:30 p.m.? It's open to those who have those responsibilities, and they need to sign up in advance. And if anybody's out there watching who hasn't signed up yet and is one of those positions, should do so right away, because it takes a little bit of time to get them incorporated. And ideally, representatives of every agency will participate. In addition, the lobbying division, and I'll turn this over to Carol at this point, is also continuing their training efforts.
Right, so on November 2nd, since the last meeting, the lobbying unit hosted a live online training on the lobby application, basically helping people navigate the lobby application. This past one was about how to navigate the lobby application, how to create a user profile, which is your entryway into the system, and how to submit statements of registration. It was really well received. We had 189 people who attended. And afterwards, we posted the recording online, so that's available to watch for anyone again. And we also did a FAQ that we posted as well with answering questions that came up. We've had 161 views of the recording since. In mid-December, we're looking at either Tuesday, December 12th, or Thursday, December 14th, and we'll announce that shortly. We'll have our next one, and that one's going to be about how to submit a client semi-annual report and how to submit source of funding disclosures. And there will also probably be another refresher on user profiles because clients typically have difficulty with that. So we plan to do that mid-December, and then in early, or sometime in early 2024, before the first bi-monthly filing deadline, we'll do one on how to submit bi-monthly reports. So we think this will really help with compliance.
And the recordings and the FAQs are posted online, so they can be accessed.
They are through the education tab or the lobby tab. You can find those.
Great. Thank you.
So those who haven't participated in the live session can view the recording, or you can do both as frequently as you wish to do. And it's a great initiative, and I think it's going to have an enormous impact in both educating the lobbying community and also in maybe easing some of the burden of the inquiries that are coming in and helping folks to navigate through the system. So it's terrific. It should have lots of positive impacts. I did want to say, obviously everyone at the table knows this, on November 1, we did have the roundtable at the New York City Bar Association. We had representatives of 8 organizations present. We had about 80 viewers online, or logins online, maybe multiples, and another 92 subsequent views of the YouTube recording. Given the specialized nature of the session, pretty good turnout overall for the roundtable.
And there were a couple of pretty good summaries and news clips too about the roundtable, which I thought was impressive as well.
Yeah, we got some very favorable coverage from it, very informed coverage. So that was very useful. And
Right.
that's it for the staff report.
Commissioner Whittingham.
Thanks. I just have one question for Carol. Where are you finding the least compliance in terms of the lobbying? So you're doing these to increase compliance, and want to know where the least compliance is.
Compliance with lobbying filings?
Is it just the filings? Yes.
Well, we get a lot of questions, I guess. So our whole unit is always about reviewing the filings, finding a discrepancy, notifying the filer, which is the CAO, the responsible party of the entity, telling them where we need clarifications or whether they didn't, identify a lobbying activity with enough specificity, or sometimes the amount reported on the client side is not matching on the lobbying side, or one is missing. All of those things go into compliance. And so we do, it would be hard to say what is the most, the biggest problem we have. People have difficulty just getting into the system sometimes, so we get a lot of questions on that. And that certainly came into play last year with our lobbying training, because a lot of these folks have never entered the lobby application, and like anyone else, technology is difficult for some. And so we got a bunch of questions and inquiries about that. If you have a plan to fix that before the next round of training is required, because right now it's every 3 years. So we have some time, but we are definitely going to change that so that it becomes easier and fewer people will have to enter the system. So that was like last year, I would say the biggest problem we had in lobbying was people who were trying to enter the system to get trained on the online ethics training had all kinds of problems, because again, many of them had never entered the system. Lobbyists who do lobbying, they don't enter the system. There's like one person at a lobbying firm, or one person at a client that, anybody that lobbies. There's one person that usually does that. Now all of a sudden we had thousands that had to enter the system. They had never done it before. They couldn't remember their passwords. We had all kinds of issues. So we definitely plan on fixing that so that in the future, one of my proposals, amendment to regulation starting next year, and you'll all see these and have the ability to weigh in on it. One of my way to fix that, I believe, is to have the one CAO at a lobbying entity, for example, be able to certify that the 20 people that work at that lobbying firm took the training. Instead of having 21 people have to go in and do the system, we'll have one. I think that will, and that was one of the things a while ago when we had some of those meetings that was brought up. And so that's a way of really, hopefully, we had thousands of inquiries on that. So last year, that was the biggest thing that tripped us up and tripped the regulated community up. And that's my way to fix that. Will occur next year. We plan on submitting a regulatory amendment to change how that's done. And I really think that will address a huge problem that we faced last year and will address concerns raised by the regulated community. So it's a win-win on both sides. And again, right now, they have to do it every 3 years. We have on our legislative agenda to make that every 2 years to kind of match the biennial cycle, which would make more sense. 3 years is kind of odd. We don't know why that happened or why that occurred. But again, even in 2 years, we can have that ready. If we do those regulations next year, that will be in place before the majority of, the 83% of people who took the training. They don't have to do it again for 3 more years at this point. Even if we change it to 2 years, we have plenty of time to get that in place to address that concern. So I guess that would be my answer. That was the biggest problem we had last year.
Okay, just a follow-up. So that's a lot of that procedurally. Substantially, what is it that you're seeing? Are there a lot of discrepancy when you're reviewing for compliance, or do you find that you're saying is it a source or where the doesn't match up? Are you finding a lot of that? So in terms of substance versus procedural, do we have a problem there or not really?
There are two components. On the one hand, Carol's group is reviewing filings as they come in to make sure they're properly completed and there aren't major deficiencies. And then they do compare discrepancies between, say, client filings and lobbyist filings. The statute does require random audits of a selection of the filings that are made, and that's a kind of separate function. The audit and review group is a shared function between ethics and the lobbying group. And it's the audit group that's taking that drill down look on a random basis.
And is that audit group in Carol's group? And so that's where I'm trying to find out. So we have them, we do these audits, or just from your own review without an audit, because you're not necessarily auditing all of them. Do we have a problem there? What are we seeing there? So I know that we are seeing in terms of which the solution is great, 1 versus 21, but is there anything else, or is it we're perfectly fine?
Well, I would never be fine, of course, but I do think our group does everything we can to fix the filing, to make, and before the annual report comes out, we do all kinds of work to make sure there aren't any discrepancies in the numbers. Amy Nicotero, who is one of our deputy directors, works on that, and the annual report comes up way too, we rarely get it out, and we have another one we're always trying to. So we really focus on numbers and making sure that the numbers match. I would say that most of the time, we are able to fix those problems. If there is a failure to, unregistered lobbying, or we think that there's some issue, we kick into investigations. That happens sometimes. But we do everything we can to get it fixed. Now, do we have, this gets into the budget, do we have enough people to always keep up with all of the filings and get the late fee notices out on time and all of those things? That's something I am always working on and trying to address. We do the best we can with the staff we have, and I think we do an excellent job of making any problem we find, fixing it. But obviously, we send some to investigations when we can't get those fixed. I don't know if I can give you stats on that right now off the top of my head about, do I think there's a huge problem here or there? We're always addressing, issues in filings that we think aren't specific enough. Perhaps they don't really tell the public what they're lobbying on. If it's not a bill number, well, they have to describe it properly. If they don't describe it properly, no one knows what they're lobbying on. So we're always working on that, and that's something that I think we will always be working on, because that's our job, to make sure that the filings are specific enough that they match.
And that's fine. The question is more narrow. It's to say, like you said, say that's a thing, is it a lot that's not specific enough? A lot of numbers. So you're correcting them. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying, what is it that you're doing more correction, for example, or what is it that you're sending over to investigation more? But I guess.
I don't know if I can answer you what's the most.
Or not necessarily, but you can say generally, like, these are the areas we find an issue more often than not. So if you can't say the most, is it?
Yeah, I would say we have issues that I mentioned, so the filing's not specific enough. We do definitely have issues where the money doesn't match. That happens a lot. We'll have issues where there isn't a registration and we have a client filing. Well, why is that? So we have failure to files, that's what we call them. There's one side filed and one side did not. These are issues we have all the time and we're always working on. I can't tell you off the top of my head which one of those three categories is like the most we find, but I could probably get you that information, afterwards.
That works. Or, these are the three areas that we're doing. That's fine. It doesn't have to be one.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Carol. Any other questions or comments on this? All right, so we have still a fairly substantial public agenda, but we're going to break now, assuming we approve the motion, to go into executive session to deal with some pressing matters there as well, and then we'll come back to the public session a little bit later in the afternoon, early afternoon, hopefully, to continue with the public agenda. So, is there a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law 105 and Executive Law 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive Law?
So move.
Commissioner Cardoza, Vice Chair Austin. Yes,
Question?
sure.
Could we give the public any estimate about when we might come back, or say that we'll check in at a certain time? I just don't want, if people are trying to watch
Sure.
it.
We can tweet it out when we're coming back, so
Okay.
people follow our Twitter feed.
Okay. Right, so we will tweet out when we're about to reconvene in the public session, for those who follow the Twitter feed.
Probably too hard.
It's going to be too hard. I would, yeah. All right, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned to executive session. All right, thank you, everyone. We are now resuming the public session of this November 29th meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. We are going to have a readout from our executive session by our Executive Director, Sanford Berlin.
Thank you, Chair Davey. In executive session, the commission discussed matters
November 29th. Go ahead.
related to litigation and legal advice. The commission discussed personnel administrative matters. The commission approved informal guidance pursuant to Executive Law, Section 94.7 and Part 932 of its regulations. The commission approved 2 staff reports pursuant to Executive Law, Section 94.10F, and the commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed 22 matters, and discussed a number of other investigative matters and issues.
All right, thank you. Before we pick up the agenda as outlined, we need to decide on whether or not we're going to have a meeting in December. We had conversations about trying to combine a December and November meeting. That didn't work out. So now we're we said that we would assess where we are and make a decision about December. Thoughts, motions, questions? Commissioner Edwards.
I'd like to make a motion that we cancel our meeting for December, we convene after the holiday.
That's the motion. The motion is to suspend with having a meeting in December. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right. So that means that based on the announcement we heard at our last meeting, and not to rush it at the end, we're going to be losing a commissioner at the end of this meeting, and that's Commissioner Kaylin Whittingham, who has decided that she will go to other pastures or additional ones after this meeting, and won't be seeking reappointment at the end of the year. Commissioner Whittingham, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Thanks, Chair Davey.
Sure.
Well, I'll still be with you for a little longer.
You will,
in
yes.
December, just not meeting publicly. Definitely want to say thanks to Governor Hochul for nominating me to this position. I want to thank the public for trusting me for the last year. I can't believe it's already a year and this is over. Well, to my fellow commissioners, thank you. Thanks for the support, and thanks for just allowing me to be here and to work together. And to the staff, thank you, thank you. I've learned a lot in a year, and I couldn't have done any of this without all of you. So just thanks to all.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your contributions, and we really appreciate everything that you've added to this commission, and you have our sincere wishes for continued success, both professionally and personally, once you're sort of formally no longer with us. We're going to assume that no one gets very far, and that we'll be in touch along the way. So thank you. Sure. All right. From the sublime to the ordinary. So back to the agenda as stated. So we're going to look at our proposed legislative agenda. So are you leading that, Michael?
Well, I just,
Tabby.
you may recall that at the last meeting, we approved a legislative agenda after some discussion based upon the recommendations of the working group that Fred had appointed. Since then, we had the roundtable discussion among various groups. I thought it was very, very positive. And they made a number of recommendations, comments. And based upon those recommendations, staff has suggested, and we agreed, of two proposed additions, which were circulated to you previously and are reflected in red at the proposed amendment in tab E. One of the recommendations, number 6, was that with respect to our recommendation that candidates have to post financial statements, we had said that they should be effective starting in February, instead 2024, but that they also include candidates in the primary, not just in the general election. So that was one addition. The second addition was to require electronic filing of all financial disclosure statements, and we agree that that's something that we should be suggesting in our legislative agenda. I think it's important to recognize that there were a number of other suggestions made at the meeting that were potentially, that were clearly worth further consideration. and the staff has been through them carefully. But the bottom line of those is we really need to have more evaluation of them, both in terms of the practicalities and the cost of implementing them. And but the staff has certainly agreed that some of these things should be looked at in depth. And as our discussion earlier today reflected, we may want to have a few other additions. But it's just not a question that we could be in a position to recommend in our legislative agenda to start considering right away. So the working committee recommends that we adopt the amended legislative agenda as set out in tab E.
Questions, comment? Well, that's a motion. We see that as a motion. Is there a second? Then we'll have discussion. Commissioner James, thank you. Conversations about the legislative agenda. And sure.
Just really briefly, I hope that next year we gave ourselves a really busy fall with a lot of commission meetings, and I think that delayed the start of the roundtable. So hopefully next year we can do it with enough time that when we get these sort of substantive proposals, we can analyze them in time.
I'm sorry, I meant to suggest just that. We've generated, I think, today and also at our last meeting, some potential suggestions. I think it's not on today's agenda, but as we move forward, we may want to have an ongoing committee dealing with legislative proposals. So I think we really have to keep that right on top of our agenda. And as I've also said, once we hear about our proposal on the open meetings law that we've made to the Open Meetings Law Committee, that item may be added, but we didn't want to do that until we heard further from the Open Meetings Law Committee, which we had hoped to hear. There's been they've been delayed, so we're not in a position today to make that recommendation.
Right. So the motion is on the table. Commissioner Carvalho.
I wanted to talk about number 7 of the proposal. Add penalties for violations of the public offices law, which currently have none. And the second, I guess, sub point of it is about adding a provision specifically codifying sexual harassment as a violation of the code. And unless I missed it, I don't see it here. One of the people who were at the round table talked about linking this to just, adding discrimination to this and using the bill that's currently pending on this, which makes it a sexual harassment and any kind of discriminatory action to be linked, because, and she gave a lot of really good reasons, and basically she thought they were kind of linked, and if you separate them out, it would be a less strong amendment. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Or remember? Okay. So I wanted to add that, and we kind of said we consider it and add that as part of the legislative initiative. And I don't see it. Is it here? I didn't see it here. So in addition to the sexual harassment, adding any type of discrimination to that.
Staff looked at what the potential impact of that broad importation of matters might look like, and just in looking at prior reports of DHR, Division of Human Rights, and the volume of work they get, and recognizing that our jurisdiction, I assume this is the proposal, would be limited to state officers, and not generally. We would anticipate an extremely large and potentially duplicative increase in the number of claims we would have to be processing without at this point, a corresponding increase in budget and staffing to meet that need. I think DHR, I'm doing this from memory, handles something, or has in the past handled something like 6,000 incoming claims annually. Now, I wouldn't, not all of those obviously are just, or directed at state officers or employees.
And I
But
think that was
some
her
number
point.
are.
Her point was like, to have a place that deals with just state employees, maybe that would make it easier to get a resolution of these claims. I think she had a lot of, I thought she had a lot of.
Yeah, and I, from our perspective, it's something we need to look at, and we would have to, if that were to be the case, we would have to look at what the additional staffing needs would likely be. We wouldn't want to create another a bottleneck for those claims. We wouldn't want to take in more.
I mean, I would think it's already
than we can handle.
against the public officers law to discriminate against anybody for any reason at all. So I don't, if we're doing the amendment, I think, and I'm not as eloquent as she is in explaining why they should be linked and why separating them out is problematic, especially for people of color and women of color in particular. So I think that should be added.
Well, I think it's very important to consider the volume of work by these amendments are increasing. And the goal here in item 7 as drafted is to avoid the problem that we think that sexual harassment should already be considered as a violation of the law. But the argument has been made by many of the respondents that it's not part of our statute. So this amendment would clarify that issue and eliminate it. Your point may well be valid, I'm not suggesting otherwise, but there is a tremendous concern about an increase in volume. I think the staff has done a remarkable job, first of all, in adding a great deal of things to the website to avoid some issues, and has taken a look at what increased volume will be here. And we simply can't rush into what may be a very constructive suggestion, but we don't know what the implications staff-wise would be. And so we've got to move slowly on that score, along with many of the other issues, and it's why we want to postpone the additional potential additions until next year.
So Commissioner Ayers and then Commissioner.
I just understood at the public, at the roundtable that we did say we would seriously consider that addition, and you're saying you considered it as just too much for us to handle.
Yes, and the staff was asked to look at that, and that's the conclusion they came to.
Commissioner Ayers.
My understanding was, it came up at the roundtable, many of us thought it sounded like a really good idea. At our full commission meeting where we last talked about the agenda, there was a concern about what kind of staffing increase we'd need to, but also about parallel investigations and whether, so would DHR continue to have this authority?
I don't think I was here for that.
It was a committee.
It must have been one of the.
No, it's the full commission meeting, I thought.
Yes, we did in October.
I could be remembering wrong, but that was my recollection.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was for those two reasons that the opinion from staff was we need to do an analysis to figure out questions like what sort of staffing increase, and also, okay, so say we get the authority to investigate, does DHR keep it? There's a similar issue with the proposal for mandatory reporting to us, because currently there's mandatory reporting for misconduct to the IG. And so similar question, that may be a good idea, but will we take that away from the IG, or will we both have it? And if we both have it, does it get confusing? So my understanding was we have a plan to get an analysis of all these questions from staff with recommendations. Unfortunately, that's not feasible given staff demands on our staff. I mean, to do that now, but I'm very comfortable saying this is really important. We need to answer those questions, but we don't have the answers now, and we need the legislative agenda.
And do we have it?
And Commissioner Ed.
We don't have it yet.
Commissioner.
And you're recommending that we don't have time to do the analysis?
Commissioner
Yeah,
Ed,
right.
we don't, for this legislative year, it sounds like we don't have the bandwidth to do that level of analysis.
There were 27 proposed additions made at the roundtable discussion. And the staff is going through them. Emily has reduced them to writing. The working committee reviewed it. And we're going to take a look at these things. It's just, we can't, there's only so many hours in the day to analyze this, and we just need we don't want to say we want something that we won't be able to execute on. And so, given the changes that have been made and the proposals that we're making, and the incredible additions we've already made, particularly on our website, we just have to take a deep breath, and we can't create the perfect world right away. And
Are you
so-
saying, are those things we wouldn't investigate
Yeah.
presently?
Well, many of them are clearly not within our agenda.
Discrimination is not.
Well, the people are,
I'm asking.
yes,
Yeah.
people today, there are cases.
Oh, really?
Right, right. So we have to take a look at
Not in
that.
the POL.
So, but sexual harassment has always
No,
been
but no.
implied in as a use of your power.
No, we're challenged on that on a regular basis.
Is that, oh.
And we're suggesting
Well,
to
we
avoid that
have one of those,
litigation.
don't we have one of these cases pending?
But
No,
to
you
avoid
can't.
those
I said- I'm
litigations.
saying
Yeah, you can't.
We have a bunch of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should go back to executive session if we're going to discuss.
No, but we can't.
I'm
Yeah.
not discussing any particular, I'm just saying in general.
Well, but it's a legal discussion, and we
Okay,
should,
Right.
all right.
we should have that in executive session.
I didn't know there was a decision made on that part of this.
Yeah, but the idea is to do the homework we need to do, because the legislators would ask these questions about jurisdiction, et cetera, and so we need to do the homework. It's going to take more time than we currently have bandwidth for, and then we'll come back next spring with another set of recommendations that we'll vet to go to the legislature for the next legislative session. But right now, this constitutes the legislative agenda. Vice Chair Austin.
After the roundtable, many of us stayed and chatted with the stakeholders who spoke and advocated various legislative ideas. And the group with whom I spoke, and there were several, I said, it's a great idea. How much more money are we going to get to staff appropriately the number of staff people we're going to need to take on that jurisdiction? And they all went, oh yeah. So, and there's an understanding that in theory it's a great idea. In reality, we can't do it. We physically, budgetarily just can't do it at this point. That doesn't mean we can't work out a legislative plan going forward to do it. But I think everybody knows that until we get our ducks in a row, it's not going to happen, and if it happens, it's not going to be logical or effective.
And in addition to staff capacity, I just want to reiterate again what's already been said. Some of these things now exist in other spaces with other authorities, and we need to work through that as well, and that just takes some time.
I guess I should also, Rachel Faust had head of reInvent Albany, had an interview on, I forget what station it was, where she was asked about some of these proposals, and she really very pleased. She was very complimentary to what we have come up with, and made some of the same points we're making as to why we can't rush into some of these other things now. It was a very complimentary interview, and so I think even the fierce advocates, if you will, recognize that there's only so much that can be done as a practical matter right away.
Commissioner Groenewegen.
I just wanted to reiterate the point I made when we first talked about this, that while I would submit that sexual harassment in any workplace is a real problem and there always needs to be vigorous efforts to combat it, I think to expressly codify that in the ethics law should not be a priority, only because, as you know, there are other bodies that are charged with it, that have staff experienced in that, and I think COLIG, the Ethics Commission, is the only body in the state with the authority to look at all the ethics laws violations, and I think to dilute our resources by taking on jurisdiction over something that is already dealt with, regardless of whether or not people think it's adequate or not, is not a wise decision. It's not that the problem doesn't exist in the workforce. I'm just of the belief that it's not a problem for the State Ethics Commission to address.
So are you prepared to offer a amendment to the motion that we strike this particular?
All I would ask is that when we vote, and I know I don't see any intent to vote piecemeal, I would just want to note that my vote in support of the agenda has that narrow carve-out, if that's possible.
Well, we'll note it in the minutes.
That's perfect.
It'll be memorialized.
Thank you.
And I'd
Sure.
like my statement
Sure,
also noted.
absolutely.
And my carve out,
Absolutely.
as you said, yeah.
Given the detailed way in which we take minutes, I suspect that and more will be there. So I don't think you have anything to worry about.
I do think before we vote, we should recognize the incredible work that the staff has done
Here, here.
in putting this together.
I agree.
And then Emily,
Thank you.
with Emily's help, and then Emily's compilation here, I think it was, really made my job and
Let
the
it be-
working group's job very easy.
Let it be so reflected and memorialized in the minutes. Thank you. Yeah, and let's thank the public.
Yeah.
And the folks at the round table for their feedback and contributions as well. Really appreciate it. All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of adopting these 8 items as our legislative agenda for this legislative season, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And we adopt them, again, recognizing the comments of our 2 commissioners, Groenwegen and Caraballo.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All righty then. So proposed memorandum of recusal, Vice Chair Austin.
Okay. You've got a draft of the recusal memorandum in tab F. I passed around to you 2 pieces of paper. The first one on the top says conflicts of interest. The motion I will be making is that we amend our code of conduct to include this Article 1, Section B, subsection 1, subsection H, as laid out there, so as to provide for a written recusal list or memorandum of recusal, and that we be required to file one within 30 days of our becoming commissioners, or for those of us who are incumbents, by this January 31st, and that every year, January 31st, it will be updated and kept by the staff so that they can make sure that we do not get materials and information relative to matters for which we are recused. Obviously, it also takes into account the fact that there are going to be times that we say, oh my God, I know that person, and we'll need to recuse on a more ad hoc basis or to amend our list. But this is a start in terms of having that list, and it's something that we kind of left open at our last meeting just to make sure that something that we could handle would be come down the pike. So that's the rule. The document that we would be filling out is the next page, Commissioner Memorandum of Recusal, which in the motion is also called a recusal list, and this would be just a statement as to who and we are recusing from. It could be a person, an entity, an organization, a corporation, whatever it is. We list it. If there's another page to add, we add it. We sign it. We understand, we recognize that there's a continuing obligation to keep the list updated, and once a year we do it.
All right, so let's get it as a motion for these 2, and then as we get a second, we'll have a discussion.
My motion would be to adopt both documents.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so.
If I may, just one other
Sure.
thing. When I had circulated it around, the only comment I got was from Michael with regard to, does that mean somebody I worked for 50 years ago? Maybe it's 60, Michael, I'm not sure.
Point of personal privilege.
That I worked for 10 years ago is somebody that I would have to recuse on now. And I used my experience from the appellate division where it was a 2-year limitation in terms of, I mean, obviously family, friends that we know forever, but in terms of other things, that it's 2 years. So that I added that in. So with that, I move we, and.
It's already been moved
and-
and
right,
seconded,
and
so
seconded.
let's see if there, now, I have a question. If this is a rules change, then what's required? Is there anything more
This goes
required?
into the code of conduct.
If
Is this just for the code of
To amend
conduct?
the code of conduct to add this.
Okay,
It's
all
just the
right,
code of
okay.
conduct.
understood.
And actually, there's a space already reserved
For this.
for
code of
this
conduct.
ad
Okay, great,
in the code.
great.
We can look on.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Commissioner Ayers and then Commissioner Whittingham.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
So on the proposed amendment to the code of conduct, my first question, is this replacing anything that's currently?
No, we
No.
left it blank.
Correct.
Okay.
We
Do
we
we,
have an insertion spot.
do we have the code of conduct that's final? Is that available anywhere?
We were holding off on posting it until we filled in the blank in effect in sub-edge.
Okay, and then my subsequent question on that is, under subparagraph 1, it says, "The recusal list shall identify each organization, entity, and/or individual with which the commissioner reasonably believes a conflict exists." I was wondering if that should say a potential conflict exists, because I think right now I don't have a conflict with most of the people on my list, because we're not investigating them or anything, but,
So why not say a conflict or potential conflict?
oh, sure, great.
So you just
I'll
set
accept
that
that as
as
an amendment
friendly,
for amendment.
friendly amendment, all right, so we don't
Or
have to
believes a
vote on it.
conflict may exist.
Where a conflict may exist.
Sure.
So how's it read?
With whatever you think works, I just.
How's it read? So that we know for the record.
A conflict may exist.
Could exist.
The recusal list shall identify each organization, entity, and/or individual with which the commissioner reasonably believes a conflict may exist.
Well,
I like potential conflict better.
Yeah.
Me too, me too.
Yeah, okay.
or could in future, well, whichever.
That's what we're going to
Potential.
capture.
Yeah,
I mean,
potential
I could get
conflict.
married to them in the future, like
Yeah,
that's.
potential conflict.
Right.
All right, so it'll read, the recusal list shall identify each organization, entity, and/or individual with which the commissioner reasonably believes a potential conflict could exist,
Could arise.
could arise,
Exists or could arise.
could arise.
And also the and/or needs a slash.
Right. All right,
I
go ahead.
would just state that,
Karen was first.
oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just, in paragraph 1, where it's saying the commissioner shall file with, it's like, it's not 3 different entities. We have the executive director, the general counsel, and the commission. Is it not just the commission that you're filing with? Why do we have listed there, like, the executive director, the general counsel, and the commission?
I believe in the statute, there's a provision with regard to giving notice to the when you think there's a conflict, you have to send the letter. If it's not on your list,
Correct.
it has to go to the executive director, the general counsel, and the commission. So I just follow through with that.
So you're giving them notice, but this is just saying filing, and that's why I'm saying it just seemed like it was like we're filing in 3 different ways. I mean, or you're notifying, I don't know, it's just the way it reads here, like you're filing.
You want to change it to deliver to?
That's fine. I mean,
Where-
notify is
The
good.
very first line.
It's filed with the commission, it's notified.
9410 says, delivered, disclosed to the commission. It doesn't say.
And executive director.
So that's, the one I'm looking at only has general counsel. Am I looking at the wrong one?
Yeah. I gave you more. Yeah.
So I guess like if you're doing, or partnering with a firm, for example, in my case, that is lists itself as a lobbyist, I have to.
Why don't we say
Yeah.
shall notify?
The commission, not everybody else.
Current members of the commission shall.
I mean, I'm going to notify the general counsel. anyway.
Yeah, I think all 3 is fine. So shall notify
The
The commission.
the The executive director, general counsel, and the commission.
But the law only says commission.
It's not filing, it's the notice is fine for everybody.
Commissioner James,
I
and then
think the
Commissioner
letter
Bowman.
is, purpose of the letter is to supplement this list which is
Right.
provided
Right.
initially.
Right.
I think the initial list, if it goes to the commission, then the general counsel and the executive director would have a copy.
Have a copy.
Naturally, it just goes from there.
I'm fine with it.
So are we striking executive director and general counsel?
From the form?
No,
This
from
is-
here.
Anything, Keith, sorry.
I would ask that it remain, just so we
We'll try
I
to
think
be
it's
sure that
consistent
they
with the
get it.
statute.
They always notify.
Right.
When you file something, just like when you file your FDF, they all see it, but that was just my point, the filing is with the body, the commission, which naturally they get to see.
So it's not like an electronic system that we can go into like that, yes, someone would have to forward it.
It's strike commission.
Yeah, we're just talking about sending an email.
No, what's the big difference? Send it to them. What's the downside?
What's, at the end of the day, what's the difference?
I'm sorry?
What's the difference?
File and notify, they're different things.
Okay, it just shall deliver to,
Or
Notify
submit?
is fine.
submit
Shall-
to.
Shall notify the,
Shall submit to
Either way.
the executive director, general counsel, and the commission,
A
commissioner memorandum of recusal, otherwise known as recusal list. And the recusal list shall identify each organization, entity, and/or individual which the commissioner reasonably believes a conflict could potentially exist.
May I make a suggestion? We take out the name commissioner, memorandum of recusal, and just call it memorandum of recusal.
All right?
yeah. That's
On both the memorandum and the, so within 30 days of joining the commission, each commissioner shall submit to the executive director, general counsel, and the commission a memorandum of recusal, per recusal list. Recusal list shall identify each organization, entity, and/or individual with which the commissioner believes, reasonably believes a potential conflict exists or could arise.
I think it was a conflict exists or a potential conflict could arise.
Oh,
Just, we gotta disclose the occurrence.
I have one concern about, by putting in individual, once we put in individual and it's now any potential, I keep thinking, as somebody who spent 35 years in government, the number of individuals that, how would I begin to
2
know?
years.
it's 2 years.
I
Well,
understand.
that's actually not in the Code of Conduct Amendment, that's only in the form, the 2-year thing. But I have to
Well,
say,
it's in the,
is it?
it's in the proposed code of conduct, yeah.
Oh, no, do I have a different?
No, but it's in the memorandum of
Yeah,
recusal,
but
there's a 2-year limit.
it's not.
And it's included by reference.
What?
Am I looking at the right version of this?
I don't,
Such renewal list, it should be recusal list, shall be consistent with Appendix 1 and Next Tier 2. And that's the memorandum itself.
Sorry, where
Where
are you?
where's that?
The last sentence of that first paragraph. It shouldn't be renewal, it should be recusal. I knew she'd have problems with my handwriting.
Document, which document are we referring to?
Yeah.
The last
The second page of what I passed out,
What's the title, conflicts of interest or commissioner memorandum?
the Commissioner memorandum.
Oh, conflicts of interest.
No. In other words, the section of the code is going to refer to the language refers to the memorandum itself.
Okay, but that's not in the draft we have in front of us, is it?
In the memorandum, it is.
No, I'm talking about the incorporation by reference.
Yes, it is.
Oh, where's,
I passed around,
I may have a
Do
different
you have
draft.
the one that says
that's,
within 30?
Yeah, there were a couple of different copies I passed around.
Oh, mine has 4 1 left. Yours says, I thought that
So
was
you're
the
looking
newer.
Is it the last sentence of little I?
Such renewal
Yes.
list shall be consistent with appendix.
All right, so is
I-
there 3
The next two.
subsections or 4 in the document? 3?
I should have numbered them, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, it's
that's
3
okay.
subsections under the conflicts of
Correct.
interest, HI 1, 2, 3.
And at
So
the end,
fourth one
and
is
at the
wrong
end
one.
of the first paragraph,
It's under 1.
it refers to appendix 1.
Now I see it. I see it.
Okay, we were all looking at
But
it.
instead of renewal list, do you?
No, I meant, it was a mistake, it's recusal.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now.
I knew she'd have problems with my handwriting.
All right,
I
Okay,
warned her.
we're all looking at the same one.
So, sorry, can I ask one question whenever it's?
go ahead.
And if this is too complicated, then I think I'm going to move that we defer this to a future workshop in the interest of finishing this. But my question is, the memorandum of recusal talks about 2 years. It's not, I think because of the long sentence, it's not clear what that modifies. And what I mean is, does it modify the other circumstance in which my impartiality may be questioned? And the reason I say that is, there are some relationships that may be more than 2 years in the past, but that are still definitely going to affect my impartiality. And so I think that should be, I would certainly disclose those anyway, but I think it should be more than voluntary, and I don't think it's clear in the current draft whether that's included, for what that's worth. Again, if this is complexifying things, then I'm going to move that we table this to continue work on it.
All right, why don't we do this? I'll withdraw my motion, and I'll work on it, and we'll put it
Okay.
on the next agenda.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So
And
it's
if
just
anybody has any
withdrawn.
comments,
I'll send you
shoot me an
that
email.
question.
Okay.
But we have a January 31st date that we have to worry about.
Right, well, we can extend
Okay.
that for this purpose.
Okay. All right, meeting guidelines under G. Do you want to talk about that at all?
No, because I told you in advance, I decided that in the interest, this is perfectly adequate. I move that we approve.
Okay, great, thank you.
Second.
If I'd known that, we would have, no, I'm just kidding.
Grace, my friend,
I'm
Grace.
kidding. Yes, right. Much appreciated. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
I did.
All right, Commissioner, Vice Chair, what's your name? Austin. All right. It's
I wonder
almost time. Any more discussion on the meeting guidelines? Sure.
In paragraph 6A,
Can you speak up?
in paragraph 6A, you mentioned, we said we have all open meetings. Does that include meetings like you had the round table and public hearings?
No, that's not the intention. It's for commission meetings, such as the meeting we're having currently.
So then I guess I would move to add the word full in front of open meetings of the commission, so it says open meetings of the full commission if we're not doing minutes at other ones, if that's the intent.
That's consistent with the intent.
Happy to
Full,
take a
full.
friendly amendment if
Well,
Public hearings aren't meetings of the commission. Roundtable,
but didn't we announce at the outset that we were treating it as a meeting?
No,
The public is
didn't?
open to.
no, we announced it as a roundtable.
Yeah.
But I thought any
I
meeting
think
that
we announced
that
for the roundtable, I think that we said we were making the link available like we do for our regular commission meetings, but it was a roundtable. It wasn't a commission meeting.
What about
We follow
public
same
hearings, same thing?
correct.
Correct, there's no action being taken.
You know, we're not transacting business.
Then you should probably. I just think you should probably clarify that. Minutes shall
Well,
be taken.
we don't have motions, proposals, and resolutions that are voted upon at public hearings or roundtables.
Right.
So I think that clarifies
Yeah.
it, because we're just hearing feedback from the public. We're not actually voting on anything and making any sort of resolutions at that time. So I think that's why it's covered.
Now, we had talked once about our committee meetings being, that we have minutes to our committee meetings. that wouldn't be included here.
Well, part of the, go ahead.
No, we had made the determination early on that we're not required to keep minutes for committee meetings.
At one
And-
point,
and
we
we
said we wanted them. We went back and forth. The last couple of months, I forget which month it was been recent, where we had this debate, and we had agreed that we would take minutes to committee meetings.
We talked, I believe, have to go back and check my notes about having action items circulated following committee meetings, so we would have a record
Right, and
of
it
what
wasn't
what next steps were.
Formal minutes, and it was incumbent upon the committee chair, I remember, that was talked about the action items.
Can I just ask you to review the minutes and then tell us where that was said? Because I just remember a long discussion about that, and we ultimately came down on the fact that we would take minutes to the committee meetings. So my request is that staff go through the minutes to come back to resonate that
We'll do that.
conversation.
We'll do that.
Just for
Right.
clarification.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm looking at one of my prior proposed meeting guidelines, and I see in there's a number 8, procedure when commissioner member of the subject of complaint. Did I like make that up or add it, or number 8? It's not on here. It has to do with what we had voted on earlier, but I see it in a prior draft of this. Was that never a part of the draft of one of these? Let me see if I can find a date on this. Here.
I don't remember that either.
Commissioner, subject of complaint.
What was the number?
It was number, Roman numeral 8, procedure when commissioner subject of complaint or inquiry.
But you're saying it's a.
Maybe that's a code
Yeah,
of,
just-
maybe that was in the code of conduct?
No,
And not
it's the commission, it's the
meeting
meeting,
guidelines?
commission on ethics, government proposed meeting guidelines.
Oh.
Was that something that you drafted? The proposed number 8?
I guess maybe I did, okay. I just thought it was here before, because I didn't see it as a mark. But that's fine, we're ready to go over the
Okay.
case.
Other comments here?
I just had a couple of very quick
Had some
things. On page 1, paragraph 2A, meeting, we've had situations where someone was sick or unable to be in a place where the public could attend. I'm sorry. That we allowed that person to be in attendance at the meeting. Should that be mentioned here? Or is that part of Public Officers 103-A?
It's part of that section of the
Okay,
public
good.
officers law.
Next, paragraph 3A3, proceedings involving administrative matters of the commission. Should we also include personnel related matters?
No.
Here's the list of what should be.
What should be public. The personnel matters generally are not
Not public.
Yeah, that's
Which is
covered in
okay.
conduct of executive
Oh, my
session.
apologies, I read it backwards.
Okay.
My bad.
Okay.
Public notice, 72 hours. Do we have this is under 4, an exception for emergencies, where we have to do it sooner? Or we don't give the,
The law
no-
there is,
Mm.
the law there's, for.
The law is a week
practical,
or,
if
yeah.
there's an emergency. Our practice is to try to get it out a week before.
okay.
That is our practice, and I believe, like, if there's a committee meeting that's scheduled last minute, we get the notice out as soon as practical after the schedule.
Okay. And finally, last thing, under abstentions, subparagraph C, it's 7C. May I suggest that the last sentence read, however, the final decision on any abstention is in the member's sole discretion, rather than responsibility.
Yeah, I think that clarifies.
So Nancy, you made the motion. Are you
I
friendly
apologize
amendment?
for jumping that stuff in.
Fine.
Okay. Is in the member's sole discretion. Okay. Anything else? Here?
So I Are you asking us to vote on this without dealing with
Yes.
section 6?
Without dealing with section.
Minutes for, committee meetings?
Yeah, because we can always amend it.
Well,
All right.
can I
Yes.
just add on that? Right now, it says that all open meetings need minutes that record all motions, proposals, resolutions, and any other matter formally voted on. At the roundtable, we don't vote or
Exactly.
make
Right,
proposals.
that's why we don't take minutes.
Yes.
That's
This
what,
is what I'm saying. This may address Claudia's concern that there are no minutes to take because under this, the only minutes is a record of what you voted.
I was making reference to committee.
committee meeting.
They do vote. They voted out.
They vote
the
to
minutes.
make a recommendation, that's true.
Right, they do vote
But
it
it's-
out.
I think you're gonna add the word
So-
full commission. What?
Well, I guess that's the
So
question.
that
of-
would-
And then we can always amend this, Claudia. So if we come up with a
Language.
language, thank you, language for, looking for the language for how we handle committees and minutes, then we can always amend this at a future meeting to include
Pending that
that.
discussion, could we add full commission so that we're not,
Sure.
so that we're just clear on what we're binding ourselves to for now? Would that work? And I'm asking, it's Nancy's motion, so this is whether she will accept it as a friendly amendment.
Sure.
The
And
the
just
full
so
commission.
You know,
right.
all of the committee meetings are recorded and put on the website, so anybody can go back and watch them and listen to them and view them that way.
Right.
So they're all out there.
But that won't preclude us, if you want to bring some language back, from us
Absolutely.
considering it.
Yeah.
No, and it should add, there's also a transcript generated, both on WebEx and YouTube.
The
Oh,
YouTube
it's-
one is the public one, because that's what we posted
Yeah,
on, so
yeah.
everybody could grab the transcript from.
So there is a transcript as well as a recording of every committee meeting, public session.
All right, so we've added the full commission, and then we've added under 7C, last sentence, is the member's sole discretion.
Is in the
In,
members.
in,
Is it in the member's sole discretion?
Under 7B, I think there's a typo, in all other circumstances, just.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else here? Are we ready to vote on this meeting guidelines? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Any abstentions? Right, it
Who
carries. Thank
seconded
you.
it? You made the motion. Who seconded it?
Maybe
I think
I think I did.
Glenn did. Yeah. All right, so what do we have next here?
Calendar.
So we have the calendar for 2024, January through June. It's under tab H.
I'm busy.
Is it Good Friday?
No, they're all Wednesday. It's just letting us
telling you what else
know,
is happening.
just letting us know, so the holidays that surround it. Yeah. Okay.
Interesting, Ash, you didn't put in Ash Wednesday. Not that I care, but.
All right. Is there a motion to approve
Facing,
the
I'm making an
calendar?
ash of myself.
Is there a second? All right, so it was Commissioner Cardozo and Commissioner Edwards. All right, ready to vote? All those in favor of the meeting dates for 2024 from January to June, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so, and Executive Law 94, subsection 1, subsection F, review. Who's doing that? Oh, yes, you are.
Either of us,
Okay.
yeah. Commissioner
forgetting
Ayers
what that is.
and Commissioner Whittingham had circulated a proposal for the conduct of the review that's called, the statutory review, that's called for with respect to all prior precedent of both the ethics commissions and the lobbying commissions in the state, as well as statutes and regulations, both for consistency and for effectiveness. And staff had also prepared, in connection with that, a proposal as well. for the process, initiating the process and how the process would be conducted, at least in the initial phases, and then figuring out from there where to go next. At this point, we think it makes sense for a working group to be created to look at the comparative proposals, come up with a plan, bring that back to the commission in January.
Yeah. And I was.
And we'll circulate the two proposals.
Yeah. So I was going to propose, if I can.
Yeah, I just
Go
wanted
ahead,
to
sure.
add that what the full commission has seen is the document that I circulated, and then Caitlin sent some comments, and I circulated a revision in light of those. Sandy, since I had been the person raising this issue the most, Sandy sent me, the staff draft he's referring to came to me for comments, and Sandy and I have talked about it a little bit, but the plan, as I understand it, is to circulate that to the full commission after this meeting so that everybody can see and folks can share whatever thoughts they might have, just so you know what documents you've seen and which ones you haven't.
And then Ava and I talked about reaching out to Commissioner Carballo and Commissioner Groenewegen to ask you if you would work with her on processing these two different documents and then making a recommendation to the full commission when you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay? So let that be reflected.
I'll convene a conversation with the two of you.
Great.
And again, we'll circulate the documents by email to the full commission, and if anybody else has thoughts, reach out to me and we'll make sure that those are,
That they're incorporated. Yeah. And then we will expect at least a report from this working group, so we can reflect that in the minutes too, at the January meeting. All right? Anything else? Well, again, let me say that we will miss Commissioner Whittingham. Again, offer her our well wishes, and thank everybody, staff, commissioners, and the public for all their contributions to trying to enhance, as our Vice Chair pointed out, the integrity, trust, and transparency of ethics in the operation of government in the state of New York. Let me also, as we enter in this holiday season, wish everyone the best of what this holiday season and life itself has to offer. And we will look to a prosperous and healthy and happy New Year for all of us. So with that, we will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second? So Edwards and Carballo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll wait till let me know when we're